The St. Louis Blues this season came to an end about 1 week ago. My mindset has changed, and we're going to get into why that is coming up here on Locked On Blues.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Lock On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about my mindset shift. That is right. I feel very differently than I did a week ago. That draft pick, we do have the 19th overall. My favorite number is 19. However, I am unsure if the Blues are going to keep it. And how do we watch the playoffs? Because I know playoff hockey is the best hockey. But after our team gets eliminated, I know it's a little bit tough to watch the playoffs. So I'm going to give you my little guide, my little cheat code as to how I am watching the playoffs. We have a lot to get into today on Locked On Blues. But first, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On NHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I know that I did. I watched a lot of great hockey, and most importantly, it gave me some more time to process, in my opinion, one of the more heartbreaking moments in St. Louis sports history in the most recent years. Obviously, a little over a week ago, last Sunday night, May 4th, we witnessed heartbreak. We witnessed the Blues, who had a 2-goal lead with only a couple minutes left, lose the lead, have the game tied, and go to double OT and eventually end up losing the game, which, yes, meant they lost the series since it was a Game 7. While some people say this was one of the best Game 7s that they have seen in a while, it's not fun for us. Maybe for 31 other teams, it was fun. For the fans that didn't have anything invested in it, I'm sure it was fun. For Winnipeg, I'm sure it was fun. But for us Blues fans, it was painful. And I don't necessarily think this pain is going to go away. It's interesting whenever I talk to anybody about the series and they tell me, well, you should be proud of the Blues for getting as far as they did. And while I am, and while I'm happy of the team's accomplishments with having that 12-game win streak, I am very proud of them for how they composed themselves at the end of the season. I can still feel disappointment with how that game came to an end. It would have been different if Winnipeg was crushing the Blues, right? And a part of me hoped that if the Blues went out in that Game 7, that would have been it. I think anytime you have a 2-goal lead, and I'm sure Avalanche fans can relate to this, and that lead gets lost, you go, in our case, Blues' case, to overtime. You barely shoot the puck. You go to double OT and end up losing the game. Yeah, it's painful. And it's going to be painful. And it's just, to me, mind-boggling, right? How 1.6 seconds, a number that seems so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, became one of the most significant numbers. And 1.6 seconds. I think about that all the time, actually, since that game. It just doesn't seem, in my mind, real that that's all it took. But it was, and Winnipeg ended up winning, and we got eliminated. I think that when we first got eliminated, I was really sad. I was emotional. There was a lot of feelings because it hit me that, and I know this is how it is for every team when they get eliminated, season's done. Horrible feeling, especially when, hockey is your life and the Blues are your number one team. It's always a bad feeling to get eliminated because then it's like, wow, gotta wait for next season. And I think that's a reality that every hockey fan faces. Even after the Stanley Cup Finals, I feel the same way. I just hate when the season ends. I'm a huge hockey fan in general. So for me, that's why I think I was so upset. Number one. Number two was how the team went out. Now, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to say that they could have won the game. It wasn't the ref's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault besides the Blues' fault, and that's the reality of it. I also do not blame Jordan Binnington. We all know how I feel about Binner the winner, one of the best goalies, in my opinion, in the NHL. But there's been problems with the Blues that we've seen all season, and a lot of that does go back to the defense. And I think that watching the games, especially the home games in round one for the Blues, I was really impressed with how they played. They played phenomenal. And then maybe this is my own fault. But then I thought to myself, I was a little naive. Oh, the same problems we had all regular season. It's not going to impact us in the playoffs. This is the playoffs. This is playoff hockey. This is different. And boy, was I wrong. This season, 17 times, the Blues gave up a last minute goal that eventually led to some OT hockey. And that's a lot. 17 times to give up a last minute goal. I think that for me, I just felt like once this team got to the playoffs, my goal and my expectations for them and of them this season were met. But then we get greedy, right? We say, hey, we just want to go to the playoffs. You know, it might be a round one exit, but we just want to get to the playoffs. The playoffs happen. We're down by 2 games. Then the Blues come back and win the next 2 games. And then we're thinking, wait, we can win this. We can win this series. And I think my problem is that the game 6, when the Blues won at home, it was an elimination game, if I can speak. And they came back and they won that game. That, to me, just made me feel like, hey, this is an 8th seed team that won't quit. I feel good about this. And I think that's why the game 7 hurts so much, because for majority of game 7, and this reminds me a lot of other sports that I've watched, but whenever you feel good all game long and you're not worried, it always comes back to bite you in the butt, because eventually the other team's going to give you something to worry about. It's like when you get a little bit too comfortable with anything in life. And for me, that game 7 was great until it wasn't great. I didn't expect it to be a shutout. I didn't expect Connor Hellebuck to be pulled. I expected a tough competition. I really did. But again, the Blues, the way that they crumbled during the last couple minutes of regulation when the game got tied, that's something that we have seen all season long. So it brings me to this. Should I really be that surprised and shocked that that's essentially what cost the Blues the game? And while some of you might say, no, Hale, you shouldn't be, I think that it's still normal to feel that way. But it was just something that I was thinking about, wow, am I really that surprised? Because all regular season, when the Blues would give up a last minute goal, I was never surprised. Even on the podcast, I joked about it, saying, yeah, I'm expecting the other team to score a last minute goal. It became a staple of my show. So why now am I more shocked, more surprised? Or is it just now, when the Blues did it, there was real consequences, which meant elimination? Again, this is something that we're going to talk about throughout the offseason, but I think that's why my mindset kind of shifted, because it wasn't like the other night when the VGK scored with 0.4 seconds left to go. That's different, right? That's a buzzer beater goal. This, it was a little bit more time, a second, 1.2 seconds more time, but still, those type of goals happen. And it's the moment you let up a little bit and you're not as aggressive, the other team's going to score. And then people in my comments were like, oh, you don't know hockey because, the other team always dumps the puck down. If you are in a situation where you know that you're a team that lets in a lot of last minute goals, I would suggest to not ice the puck. That's my first suggestion. Listen, I know I'm not a hockey coach, but as I said, I have been working in the hockey industry for about 5 years now. I'm in professional locker rooms. I know what I'm talking about. And when I am saying that that is not the best strategy at all for a team like St. Louis, who notoriously gives up last minute goals, you shouldn't do that. But hey, again, my opinion. And that is why this is an opinion based podcast. All right, time to talk about my friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So, when I am thinking about the draft and how the Blues have the 19th overall pick, I can't help but think to myself, why would they use it? I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way to any of the kids that are up to be drafted. I think that, just even being drafted is a huge honor. I know how hard these guys work. But at the end of the day, right, this draft isn't a deep draft. This draft isn't a draft where you're going to get generational talent. And I know people might say, well, hell, isn't that what they say about every draft, that the year prior was always better? And that's not always true. It just depends, honestly, on the talent that is in the draft, which is why the 2017 draft was so good. But in the 2004, there's a lot of good draft classes, right? But I think for me personally, the reason why maybe I'm in a situation where I feel like, and again, just my opinion, why I feel like this upcoming draft is just so important is because of the assets that the Blues can get from it. You have the 19th overall pick, right? That's a big deal to have that. That's not like a light situation by any means. And having the 19th overall pick means that the Blues have some form of visibility. They have some sort of draw to them because another team might want to make a trade. And the Blues are in a situation where, in my opinion, I feel like they could benefit greatly from a potential trade. Now, again, who would be willing to take some of these guys? I don't know. I don't suspect a player like a Nicoletti, a Justin Folk to be back on the team. Offensively, I can't tell you. I know I kind of said the name Nathan Walker, and I love Nathan Walker, but I just can't think of any other players that the Blues would be willing to trade right now. But wouldn't it make more sense to package that 19th overall pick in a trade so you can get something in return? And I think for me, it's easy for me to say that, okay? It's easy for me to come on this podcast and to tell you, the listeners of Locked On Blues, hey, this is why the Blues should trade this draft pick. But the problem is, it's not like the Blues have any player that they can trade or willing to trade that will give them that much value. The Blues need a center, right? The Blues need help defensively. There's a lot of things that the Blues need. Right now, we got news that Torrey Krug most likely won't play the game of hockey again. And he was big on the Blues' power play and a big defensive presence. And despite what some of you might say about Torrey Krug, I was always a fan of Torrey Krug. It still hurts this team more than anything not to have him. So I think for me, I'm just in this mindset right now of how can the Blues improve? What can they do to improve? And being said, would it be silly? Would it be unrealistic for them to give up that first round draft pick? Last year, we got lucky with getting Dvorsky, right? I mean, not Dvorsky, Adam Juracek. Why did I say Dvorsky? Maybe I'm just so excited about seeing his potential, right? Played a couple games for us this year. But Adam Juracek. And again, a little bit of an injury. That's why he dropped, but he's still a good player. I think, though, overall, it's really important for the Blues to be able to utilize this draft pick as like an asset, as like a reason for other teams to want to make a successful trade. And they have the capability of doing so. But I just think, in my opinion, to make a trade, to do anything in that sense, you need to have a team that not only is going to be able to give something back to another team, like a draft pick, and I know that's a bit of an awkward question, right? Who would you be willing to give up? And I hate the word give up actually, but you're not going to get rid of a Colton Parayko, a Bushi, a Robert Thomas, but not even a Jake Neighbors, a Bolduc. You're not going to do that, a Holloway, a Broberg. But then there's other players that just come to my mind. I love Oscar Sundquist. I think he's excellent. Would you give up him? Foxa had a good season. Would you give up him? Like, would you give up the guys that maybe have a lesser name, lesser value, even though they do a lot for this team? And I think that's where I question, what are the Blues going to do? Even a Tyler Tucker. But again, if you want to get something good in return, how good is the 19th overall draft pick? You get what I'm saying? You have to package it correctly. And that's what makes me concerned right now about the Blues, is that with this draft, it's not a deep draft. It's not like a draft that's going to be memorable. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But again, all the good draft picks you're really going to have within like the first 8 picks. So I doubt the Blues will move up because the Blues don't need a draft. They need to just trade. And that's the reality. Free agency too, signing guys. But again, then there's the money issue and the cap space issue. So the best and most, I think, in my opinion, beneficial thing that the Blues can do would be to compose a trade and package in the 19th overall draft pick. Last year, before the first day of the draft, the Blues were able to get Texier. And I have to tell you, I like Texier. I thought he actually did a good job in the playoffs. But again, like, you knew what you were getting out of him. The Joseph brothers, I know, we have Mojo now, Matthew Joseph. But PL, I mean, it didn't pan out back in Pittsburgh. It's fine. It's been a really weird season. We got rid of Scott Perunovich to the Islanders. But it has been a weird season. I think that getting Cam Fowler was probably one of the best pickups that we got. And again, thank you, Anaheim, for him because he has been phenomenal. But again, when you just think about all the moves that the Blues made this year, there were subtle moves, nothing crazy, but it still got them into the playoffs. So imagine if the Blues put together a move that's a little bit bigger, a little bit more dramatic, and you can kind of think about what this team will do with that. That, for me, makes me very excited about the future of this team and what they're going to be able to accomplish. I do have high expectations for this team because of how much I love this team. And I do. I want this team to be successful. And it's funny, but when I talk about the Blues, I can't help but smile because this is what brings me the most happiness in life. It's Blues hockey. So again, we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, this is my stance on it. It is what it is, but it is an interesting, I guess you can say, take, in my opinion. just because I feel like that draft pick is not very useful. But you know what is useful? It's playoff hockey. I know. How do we watch playoff hockey again? Because we find our way, baby. We always find our way. So obviously, I want the Dallas Stars to win, right? Oh my gosh, do you want Dallas to win? I hate Dallas. However, I will say that when it comes to the team that eliminated me, I know some people get weird. They're like, oh, well, if the team that eliminated us goes on to win the whole thing, I'll feel better about it. Not me. I'm petty. And I've always been that way. And it's not even just like something that's new. I've always been that way. Whoever eliminates us, I just want them to like get out. So for me, fine. But let's go take a look at the series right now because it is very interesting. So yesterday the Stars won. So now Dallas is leading 2-1. You have the Vegas Golden Knights. Ooh, and this was an interesting game. They play again tonight. But the VGK, they are trailing by 1. I don't want Edmonton to win because of how rude they were about Dylan Holloway not playing in the playoffs. And I'm not talking about the team, I'm talking about the fans. But VGK got that goal with like 0.4 seconds left. So that was kind of neat. I was going to say swaggy, and then I was like, oh, that's kind of awkward. Panthers shut out Maple Leafs yesterday. Yep, that is Craig Berube's Maple Leafs. And now the series is tied 2-2. And then you also have Carolina, who leads the Capitals 2-1. The way that I see it, it's simple. I feel like the Maple Leafs and Panthers series is the best series in the playoffs. For me, it's the most entertaining. I mean, you have the defending Cup champs and the Florida Panthers going against a very determined Maple Leafs, a very physical series. Capitals, Hurricanes, not really too exciting for me, if I'm being honest with you. So I'm not as invested. And then, of course, I have my rooting interest against the Jets. And again, like, it's not like I'm like, go Dallas Stars. Like, I just don't want the Jets to win. And then we have the Golden Knights and the Oilers. I know like everybody hates the VGK, and I get that, like, same. However, again, I'm also against the Oilers. So I think for me, an ideal situation for the West would be the Golden Knights versus the Stars. And then for the East, oh, this is tough. This is tough. Man. I want to say Panthers because I love Matthew Tkachuk. I do. But I think it's going to be the Maple Leafs and it's going to be the Hurricanes. And then who will advance? I think the Leafs will go to the Cup Finals versus the Dallas Stars. And I think the Maple Leafs will win. So that was tough. It's not easy. It's really not easy. When you are in my situation here where you're like trying to just like find rooting interest, so you have to look at former Blues players, coaching staff and whatnot, but then you realize that like a Canadian team hasn't won in a while, and it's like you won that for the fans, but then you're like, oh no, I don't, and then you're like, yes, I do, and then you're conflicted because then the two other Canadian teams within the Oilers and the Jets you're really rooting against because of how they were towards you. It's a really difficult situation to be in. Like, do I want McDavid to win a cup? Absolutely. I think he's one of the greatest players, and I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, like, it's just like, it's so conflicting. I wanted the Blues to win, but I knew they weren't going to win, so no point in that one. All right, I will talk to you more tomorrow about some more end of the season exit interviews and so much more. But I needed to get this little rant session, right, off my chest, talk to all of you, and kind of set the mood for the week ahead. I'll talk to you later. And like always, how I end every single episode, let's go Blues.